Have you ever needed to connect to a remote server somewhere? Maybe it's a web server. You need to change a setting or edit a file, maybe upload some images. It's not terribly hard if you know SSH and you understand the command line and how to do things like secure file copy. Not a big deal. But did you know you could do something a little bit different and a little easier and a lot more fun? That's what we're going to do today. We are going to edit a remote web server that I have running up on Azure, and we're going to do it with VS Code. Let's take a look now. Here's my new virtual machine. It's running up on Azure. It is just an Ubuntu box, and I've installed Node on it. And now I want to connect to it. I want to play around, but I don't want to use SSH over a terminal. I want to do something better. Did you know that you can connect to a remote server using SSH? You can even connect to Docker if you want. All you need is an IP address, and you need port 22 open. You can even use Windows Subsystem for Linux. The point is, you can lock VS Code onto a remote server so you could do all kinds of things. Now, a couple weeks ago, my colleague Reynold Adolphe showed you how to connect to your local development machine from a coffee shop on an iPad. This video is a little bit different. We are going to be doing remote work on an Azure VM. Speaking of, let's jump into it and connect now. There are two ways to do this. The first is to go to the remote window. And if I actually shrink this screen so we can see a little bit more, there we are. We can go to the Remote Explorer. And if I open this up, you can see here's all of our remote sessions that we can access. And I don't have any. But I want to change that. So what if I hit this little plus icon right here? Once I do that, I am prompted to enter the SSH command to log on to that remote machine. Alternatively, I could come down over here and click the remote indicator. And if I do that, we can choose to connect to a host and add a new SSH host. So let's do that now. I'm going to do SSH rob at, and then paste in that IP address again. And then it's going to ask me where I want to store this information. I have a couple of choices. The first is I can store it locally in the .ssh config file. This is a special file for SSH. This has nothing to do with VS Code, and it basically allows you to save commonly accessed SSH endpoints. So I'll use this. Otherwise, I could also put this globally in the etc directory, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to put it here. So down here, you can see that the host has been added. I haven't actually connected yet. It's just added the host. Let's open up that configuration and see what we've done. Inside of here, you can see we have a setting. It kind of looks like YAML, doesn't it? That's not YAML. Don't worry. Don't be scared. What I could do here is I can just say node on Azure to give this a name. And then down here for the host name, I'm going to use an IP address. This could also be a domain name. And finally, user is going to be me. Once I save this, I can come over here and refresh. And now you can see that we have access to something that makes a bit more sense. Node on Azure instead of having an IP address. If I click this little remote indicator down below and say connect to host, I will also have that choice up above. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect from the Remote Explorer right here, and I'm going to choose that I want to connect in the current window. I can also connect in a new window if I want, but I'm just going to use the current one. And a whole bunch of fun stuff's happening here. It's setting up the SSH host node on Azure. It is downloading the VS Code server on the remote machine, and it's going to take a second here to boot up, and boom. We have a terminal session. This is like magic. This always blows my mind every time I see this. A terminal session on the remote machine. What version of Node do we have? Version 20. All right, to see that in action, let's open a folder. What happens if I say open folder? What's home Rob? Well, this is the home of my user on the remote machine. This is where all kinds of fun stuff happens. Let's hit OK. And it's going to ask me if I trust myself. I suppose I do. I'll trust myself. And then let's open this up over here so we can see a little bit more information. You can see we have the .vs Code server directory. Not going to go into too many details about this right now. Basically, this is where all your remote and local information are stored. If we install extensions specific to our server, this is where they're going to be stored. We'll do that later. For right now, we are connected and we can now upload files. We can edit them. We can open up our profile to see what that looks like. And if we want to change anything in a remote profile, we can do that right here. Same thing with the bash RC. Whenever bash starts up, we have a terminal session. We can change any of that right here. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a directory to put my new Express application, and I'm going to be Unixy about this. So Command Shift / opens up a terminal in the editor area, and I'm going to do make -p var dub. Now, I'm probably going to get an error when I do this, and yes, I did. Permission denied, because I don't have elevated privileges by default here. I didn't elevate my user. It's just a normal user, but I do I should say, part of the super users here. So what I can do is I can say sudo make directory and then -p. And then actually, instead of doing all that, I'm going to do double bang, which is a little shortcut, which is great. Now, unfortunately, when you create a directory using sudo, that puts the file owner to root and permissions to root, meaning if anybody tries to change this, they have to be a super user, invoke super user privileges to do that. So instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is just change the owner to me. And to do that, I can do www boink. So that's nice. And so to check this out, we can go to cd and then var www. Actually, let's just do var. And then I'm going to do ls-la. And then by doing all of this, you can see who owns all of the files in here. You can see www rob. Very good. That's what I want. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say open to our new directory, var www. Okay, so we are on to the next step, which is that I want to install an Express application in here. So to do this, I am going to use npx, which is the npm executable. It is a just-in-time executable. If you have a binary package that you want to download and run, this will just run it once and discard it as opposed to having it installed everywhere. So let's see, this is going to be Express generator. And I'm going to set the view engine to be pug. And then the last thing is I got to give it a name. I'm just going to call mine app. And so yeah, needs to install these things and boop, yay. This is exciting. All right, so as you can see here, the directory is right there. We have our entire application there. That is not ideal. I want to be working in that application. So I'll hit Command O and just type in app, select that right there, say okay. And now it's going to reopen inside of our application directory. This is neat. Now I just need to install everything. I'll do that with npmi. Good, everything is installed as we expect. Now let's run it. npm run start go. Well, all right, the application's up and running, but how do we know? Well, we don't, do we? Let's go back over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, once again, my IP address and pop this in. What happens if I do port 3000? Well, we just skip to it. I'm going to say nothing is going to happen because port 3000 is locked down on the remote server. I'd have to go in and open up that port, and I don't want to do that. Ideally, what would happen at this point is I'd go and install Nginx, I'd configure it and so on, and that would be fine. That's if I'm setting up a public web server, but here I'm just checking a few things out. I might be doing remote development on a remote VM, and I might not want to grant people access to all this. So let's stop this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and use one of the things that blows my mind every time I use it. So let's go to terminal. I'm going to open up a new terminal session, and let's go to ports. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to forward a port on the remote machine to a port on my local machine, which is crazy. It's just nuts, right? So there it is. Port 3000, just added it, forwarded here, forwarded address to my localhost 3000. Now I can change this if I want to, but I'm going to keep it just the way it is. All right, this always just freaks me out. We'll do npm run start. There we are. App is up and running. And if I go to localhost 3000, hello, Express. How crazy is this? How crazy is this? Is running. This is running on a remote machine, and it is being piped down to my machine here through SSH. I still just can't believe this works. All right. I know what you're thinking. Rob, you got to prove that that works to me. Okay. All right. Ease up there, buddy. We're all friends here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, welcome here to title. I'm going to say welcome from remote. Boink, save that down, come back over here, refresh, welcome from remote. Localhost 3000 running in the cloud. I think that's crazy. Don't you think it's crazy? I think this is like parlor tricks. It's magic. It's voodoo. It's so strange. But there's even more you can do. Let's get into debugging next. Here's another fun one that I still can't believe is possible. This is app.js. This is the startup file for my Express web app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a breakpoint right here. And then I'm going to go over here to run and debug, or I could also do Shift Command D. And this is the same debug window that you would see if you were running this app locally. Then I'm going to hit run and debug. Will it catch? Will it catch my breakpoint? Yes, it does. I have all the same facility here that I would with a normal local debugging session. I have a call stack. I have watch variables that I can play with. I can go over here and also see my local variables. Skipping ahead, you can see that our app is now defined. Before it was undefined. We can skip over here. We can jump into code. All the things you could normally do locally, I am now doing remotely. So the last thing I'm going to do is probably the most fun and still so mind-blowing. I'm going to set up tasks on this remote machine, but before I get there, I have to remind myself how to actually do that. So I'm going to use the VS Code chat participant, and I'm going to say, create a tasks.json file using PM2. And there we go. We're creating a test.json file. Very good. So if you don't know what this is, PM2 is a process manager for Node. It basically runs production processes as opposed to just calling app.js directly, because if we have a bug, it will die and go away. PM2 will restart it for you and so on. So this is something I probably would want to have in production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to come back over here to the remote and I'm going to create a new folder. This is where our settings are going to go into the .vs code directory. And then inside of here, we have a tasks.json. And good. This looks pretty good to me. All right. So now what I want to do, which is the fun part, I want to go to my extensions. This is extensions on the remote machine. And I'm going to look for one that I like to play with. It is called tasks. Load tasks into the status bar down below here. So I'm going to install this, and it's actually going to install this extension on the remote machine, which just blows my mind. I think it's so fun. And look, boom, start, stop, restart. Very good. All right, there we go. A little cleanup, and we are ready to go. We are ready to test this. I also added a command for killing everything, PM2 kill. Perfect. Let's start it up. Let's see what happens. Let's start the app on port 3000, and boom, we are online. Look at that. That is so fun. Just press a button and off we go. Let's pull over a browser here and let's go to localhost 3000, see if our ports are still forwarding, and they are. Running behind PM2. Now let's go back over here and I'm going to stop the app. There we go. PM2 stop off. I come back over here. Of course, it is not going to load. It is not. It is spinning. And then we'll just kill everything. Why not? Shut everything down. So remote development with VS Code is astonishingly fun. And it's so easy to move around a server and to install the things you like. Well, I hope this has been helpful. And that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching and happy remote coding.